Okay, so this is report or case 672, and beware of the virgin tooth that is hurting the patient. This patient came in, one of my last patients of the day, was having a lot of pain. You can see the different x-rays. This is the x-ray at the very end with the cavity in there. So, and these are some CBCT pictures, images. Uh, Patient was in a lot of pain, percussion 3+, bite 3+, no response. The tooth was necrotic. And I put hopeless later on because we extracted it, but uh, a little bit of a thickening, PDL thickened, possibly slight radiolucency on the mesial root. I ended up shaping to the Wave 1 Gold primary, which is a 25 tip, 1 millimeter short of working length. I used Triton for irrigation as I shaped, and then I used Gentle Wave, the clean flow handpiece, and I bonded the crown, I bonded it to the tooth, and I still had trouble with the clean flow for whatever reason. I usually don't when I off and on when I use Gentle Wave, but you can see the cracks, the different cracks, mainly the distal marginal ridge fracture that kind of went down into the distal canal, and then there's a crack line that went across the floor, mesial to distal. And here's just kind of showing proof that I use clean flow and Gentle Wave, bonding the platform. So here's the platform. I had to use three platforms. So it was kind of annoying. It was like 6 o'clock at night, but we did get it done. We ran the full spectrum, the full Gentle Wave, and ended up finishing and kind of cleaning up. And then I just put cavity in there. Patient had the tooth extracted 2 days later by his general dentist. Immediately put it into the formalin bottle. I sectioned the crown and then sent it to Gary for review.
So we got the tooth from Reid in formalin. We're going to do an analysis on the distal root first because the mesial root had the root tip fractured off. I did get some imaging on the mesial root, but let's do the easiest root first. So the distal root was completely intact, and we did a sagittal split on both roots, which is our method. This was the fracture on the mesial root tip, and we're actually able to section that and get some good pictures of it, which I'll cover in the second part of this tutorial. Looking at the fracture, you can see the fracture on the distal part of the root that appeared to end right at the level of the canal orifice, so I do not believe the root was fractured. And these are the splits of the sagittal splits that we used. So we got two halves to the distal root. This is what they look like hydrated. And in one of the sections, there was quite a bit of pulp tissue. And when you look at that dehydrated, that tissue shrinks down into little tiny pieces. So it's important to kind of understand what you're looking at. So in that D1 part of the distal root, we had several sections of dehydrated pulp present, and we're going to take a look at some of that. But it does raise the question of, where do you actually look in this tooth? And you're all familiar with my feelings on the bias in SEM studies. I love this article because it reviews them very, very well. Not only the fixation and specimen preparation, but also the operator bias. So we're thinking, how do we mitigate some of that operator bias? And I think stitching is one way of mitigating it so that you're not subjected to my bias in looking at this. And at the lower powers, doing a stitch, you can actually see everything that I can see operating the microscope. This is the section of the D1 section, and you can kind of get a sense of what I see when I'm looking at the whole root. But as you increase the magnification, the stitching actually becomes much more important because you're looking at a much smaller area. And even at the 100x stitching, you can still get a pretty good sense of the amount of tissue still left, and also the treatment of the canal wall by the irrigation device. This was a Gentle Wave case. And you can kind of get a sense of the very varied nature of the irrigation device, where there's a lot of open tubules, but also a lot of undemineralized predentin as well, and some instrumentation debris as well. So it's worthwhile taking some time. You know, ideally you want to randomize the areas of interest, but that's not practical. And then I had this idea, well, let's select those areas, but that's not practical either, because each of these stitching areas takes an hour to do each stitch. So then I had an idea, well, let's just select certain areas where we're likely to have items of interest, and this is more doable. But then even at the higher power, because when you look at these areas at the higher power, you can only look at a little tiny area. This is at 1000x, and you kind of get a sense of the predentin and pulpal tissue that's still present. So I urge you to go to the website, or the site, the MIE site, and really take a look at these, because you can really educate your pattern recognition and get a sense for what these irrigation devices actually do. There was quite a bit of dentin and predentin, or predentin and pulp tissue still present here. And at 5000x, which is where you really want to look if you're looking for microorganisms, the area that you can look at is so small, so the danger of operator bias goes up even more as you're at these much higher magnifications. Here you get a sense at 5000x of the pulpal tissue still present. This is pulpal tissue just above the predentin. And as you zoom into these areas, you get a sense for how much tissue is actually there. So the effect of the device is not uniform. In areas, there are certain areas where the dentin is very, very clean and looks like the promotional material, and other areas where there's quite a bit of pulpal tissue still present. In the D2, the second half of the distal root, we selected 3 areas that we thought would be likely to provide items of interest. If you look at area number 9, where you can see I've stained the tissue there a little, so you can see some pulpal tissue. And because the stitching has to be done horizontally, I turned these areas horizontally, because the stitching is much, much easier doing it horizontally instead of vertically. And when you go in and look at this area, which is a little more coronal, you get a much better sense that the effect of the device is much better coronally than it is apically. And here you can see still quite a bit of predentin is still present, but areas of where the instrument did not touch, and other areas where the instrument did touch, you can see the smear layer there, and other areas where the dentinal tubules look very, very clean. And those are areas actually where the instrument did not contact the wall, or the effect of the device was to remove all of the predentin and demineralize it completely. And then at higher power, you get this looks more like the promotional material of the device, where you have very clean dentin, but also areas where there's quite a bit of undemineralized predentin still present. In some of these areas, you really get a good sense of the undemineralized chalcospheroids that are present in the predentin. There you can see those are the round objects. And there you can see where I've outlined where it looks like maybe there's some tissue. So looking at this at 1,000 stitched, you get a sense for what the device is actually capable of doing. And here you can see there's still quite a bit of mineralized predentin still present, and other areas where it has very, very clean dentinal tubules. And here you can see the calcospheroids that have not been demineralized as part of the mineralized predentin. So all in all, it's a very interesting exercise to try to mitigate the effect of operator bias. Here you can see the partially demineralized calcospheroids of the predentin. So then let's look at the area 7, the apical area in D. So this is the area of interest, area 7, and we're going to do a horizontal stitch there and kind of look at the area where there's some pulp tissue still left, but also some naked dentinal wall near the terminus of the root. So you have some, don't know if it's pulpal tissue or instrumentation debris. It's hard to say, but we're going to do 500, 1500, and 3500 stitched in that area and see what we can see. So it looks like there's some resorption going on down near the terminus, as well as some pulpal tissue. And not very many dentinal tubules. You can see some demineralization of the predentin going on, as well as some coagulated red blood cells. And there it is at 1500x, and you can get a sense of how clean it is. Some of this may be sectioning debris as well. It's hard to tell. When we do the sectioning, we get some debris in the canal. But looking at the naked dentinal wall, you get a sense for the activity of the irrigation device. So it's pretty much a non-demineralized predentin that's present, obviously in the process of being demineralized. And you get a pretty good sense of what the tool is able to do. And that looks like it's... So in all of these sections, I detected no evidence of any microorganisms anywhere. So I don't know if there were microorganisms present or not, but that's the report on the distal root. And if there's interest, I'll make a report on the mesial root as well. So I'm looking forward to any comments you may have.